gentlemen. I'm Curtis Round, and welcome to Final Take. Joining me on the debate desk today is Adam Yurkovsky and Justin Pomplin. Gentlemen, it's nice to have you guys back. You had a little break last week. How's it going, Justin?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. Looking forward to the intramural basketball game where we get to stomp you tonight.
I'm doing real good, real busy, but hanging in there. So let's debate some sports, huh?
Justin, we'll talk about that off here. Let's get to it right away. We have some pointers updates for you, SPASH and Pacelli news, and later on some NFL and MLB playoff updates. Well, first, let's get to it. The UW Stevens Point football team was back in action this past weekend against UW-Eau Claire. The Pointers look to get back on track to speak after a tough win against River Falls. The Pointers didn't disappoint as they beat the Blue Golds 30-3. The Pointers' offense looked a little sluggish, however, this past weekend, as Kyle Larson, who has looked so efficient for the majority of the season, went just 14 of 26 with one touchdown and one interception. On the ground, the Pointers rushed for a season-low 89 yards. And after a back-to-back subpar performances, should the Pointers be concerned moving forward on the offensive side of the ball?
I don't think they have to be too concerned. Obviously, they've hit a little bit of a bump in the road here in conference play. I mean, you have familiar opponents. They kind of know your tendencies. I mean, I think they need the running game to get going to develop a little bit more of a balance in their offense, but I think they have a good chance to once they get that balance, they can start racking up the points again.
I would have to disagree. I think they should be a little concerned. I think they've played teams in River Falls and Eau Claire that I think many people expected them to be pretty handily after that North Central game. And I think, they went on the road to River Falls, so maybe that had something to do with it. But I think Kyle Larson's got to play better. You can talk about the run game, which has been pretty shaky too the last few weeks. But Kyle Larson, the last game, 14-26, and with the interception early. But I think he's just got to settle down a little bit. I think, he's a sophomore, he's a young kid, and maybe being 5-0 has something to do messing up with his mentality moving forward. I think he's getting a little excited, but I think he needs to just settle down and move forward and play better football.
Yeah, and I think the panic button's a little low right now for them, but to start getting into these big, tough matchups like Platteville this weekend coming and then going on to Oshkosh and Whitewater, that's when we're going to start panicking if this offense is doing that versus those teams. You have to pretty much play near perfect. But I think a little bit with this offense is, me and Adam were talking about this on the booth. I don't know if you agree with us here, but I question the play calls sometimes. I mean, some of these plays, Kyle Larson has finally got going in a part of one of the drives, and then all of a sudden you look at it and they throw in a different quarterback. Sometimes I just don't get what the offensive plan is going forward or what they're trying to do.
Well, yeah, your point. You shouldn't be switching quarterbacks if they have the drive going. If he's got the momentum, I mean, if something's having problems, I mean, throw it in the quarterback like trick play, like every now and then. But if Larson's got something going, you got to keep him in. And I mean, the running backs, I've talked with the offensive linemen. They say that the holes are there. Running backs just need to be a little bit more patient.
Yeah, I think Dwan Wright especially gets a little too north and south with his running. I think he's just got to hold on and just be more aware of where the holes may be. But touching on the play calls a little bit, one thing I notice is they are dead set on staying in the gun or the pistol moving forward. They don't do any under center work, and I think inside the 5-yard line, I think maybe they should consider going under center, especially at the one they had. I think it was like a 3rd and 1, and then they ended up kicking a field goal.
They passed the ball.
And they passed the ball. Yeah, they passed the ball, and then before that, 2 plays they were passing the ball. I mean, we're in the pistol formation, so I think being under center, especially at the 1-yard line, that opens up things like quarterback sneaks with Kyle Larson. I think he could just nuzzle his way in there for the end zone if he's under center. So maybe the play call's a little susceptible for how that offense has played recently. But like I said again, Kyle Larson, it took a little bit for them to get going offensively against the Blue Golds, who is arguably the worst team in the conference right now, and no doubt. And it took a few trick plays to get going as well. I think that end around to, I think it was Alex Wallace, that really ignited that offense. But before that, they were looking really sluggish.
Yeah, and me and Adam talked about this, him bringing up the trick plays, is if you look at every game that got them going on offense, I want to say every time was they had a trick play which started the offense going. And teams going ahead, they got to be game planning for this, because every time the Point offense got going, it was because of a trick play. And if teams start to figure that out, this is going to be a long road ahead for this Pointers offense, because it seems like they have been sluggish so far, and then they get that spark play, the end around, the running back option pass, or whatever you want to call the play. But it will be definitely interesting to see how these teams game plan against these trick plays that they're pulling out of their hats every time the offense is so slow. And I'm glad you're the insider for offensive line. One of your roommates is an offensive lineman for them, and it's good to see because I'm kind of curious why. Me and Adam talk about why isn't this offensive line getting the push? And like you said, they probably are, and the holes are there. They're just not patient enough getting in there.
I mean, these running backs, they hit the first hole possible. Something that's a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. I mean, they watch the film, the offensive lineman. They've told me that they clear a guy out, and then if he would have cut back, he's got another lane right there. So I mean, some of the vision of the running backs, there's holes there. They just need to find them.
Yeah, but I think also you look at the bigger picture. I think all parties have to be accountable, the offensive line and the running backs, because I think the offensive line, with how much passing they do and so many things out of the gun and pistol formations, I think they're kind of recruited to be pass blocking linemen. So I don't think they're going to be those hogs to get down there in the trenches and make huge holes for the running backs every time. So I think both parties need to be held accountable, but like you said, the running backs need to get more electrifying as the season progresses.
And I'd also like to say the WIAC is a little bit, besides North Central, the WIAC is the toughest conference in the country, so the competition has been stepped up a little. I mean, Eau Claire is not the best, but I mean, they played a top 25 team every week. River Falls has definitely improved over the past couple of years, so I mean, the competition has increased.
Alrighty, now let's go to the defensive side of the ball. It's been a little bit opposite. This tough defense for the Pointers. They held the Blue Goats just 3 points last Saturday, which isn't even surprising considering UW-Eau Claire has only scored just 27 points all season. Still, the Pointers looked impressive to stay the least flying around, and most of all, pressuring the Blue Goats quarterback from start to finish. Zach Velasquez continued to play outstanding football as he recorded a team-high 10 tackles on the day. Aaron Carlin also played well, recording 2 sacks and 5 sacks total through the game. Now, cornerback Michael Longmire also was very impressive as he had 3 tackles and was very disruptive for the Blue Goats all day long. Some people like to say defense wins championships. And as the season progresses, do you guys think these guys believe that this Pointers will live and die by their defense right now?
I don't think so because, I mean, they have a decent offense. I mean, but sometimes if one's not working, the other one picks the other one up. And, I mean, the defense got kind of lucky on the first play of the game there. It had a reverse and a wide receiver pass. I mean, they had 2 guys wide open and they dropped it. So they got a little bit lucky there. The game could have been different. But when the offense has been sluggish the past couple of weeks, the defense has picked them up. And when the defense wasn't the greatest in the first couple of games, the offense was really good. So can't wait to see what they can do if they can put a complete game together.
Yeah, and that's a big if right there against Platteville, who's a very tough opponent coming up this weekend. I think this weekend for sure that defense is going to have to play lights out against the Platteville offense that has looked pretty darn good this season so far, except against North Central. So I think that the defense definitely needs to step it up this game, and then obviously against Whitewater down the road. But like you said, I think they need to find a good balance, and I think they need to pick each other up as they go along this season.
I don't think this defense is really slowed down at all. I haven't seen the first 2 games, so I don't know where you're coming from there. But I think this defense has kept this team in every game, and if it wasn't for this defense, they would have not beaten North Central.
Yes, I agree with the turnovers they've been able to force. That's been a huge difference in giving the offense good field position, lead to points. But I think they need to improve on not allowing the big plays. That could come back to haunt them someday.
Yeah, and that could, but obviously this defense, they have 13 interceptions on the season now as a defensive unit, and they're always creating turnovers, which gives their offense a lot of opportunities. So I think the offense has faced a lot of short field this year, and that could be one thing why they've looked so efficient, especially given the short field that they've been given. So I think this defense, if they keep creating turnovers, it starts this Saturday against Platteville, the sky's the limit for this team.
Well, and Adam, he just loves to steal my thunder here, but that's what I was going to say. This offense seems like they're always in the opponent's side of the field every time. Most of the time they're on the field, and some of these times they don't even get a score out of it, which is when you're coming up and playing Platteville and playing Oshkosh and playing Whitewater and probably the toughest conference. It's going to be hard to overcome when you're not scoring points when the defense gives you the opportunity.
Yeah, and I noticed this past Saturday as we were doing the broadcast, the Pointers, if they were faced with a long field, oftentimes they went 3 and out or were stalled on offense. So it'll be interesting to see against a team like Platteville, if they're given a long field, if they can march down the field and score.
Well, speaking of Platteville, it'll be a huge test this week. They're facing Platteville, number 17th ranked. The Pioneers have been a tough matchup for the Pointers in the past. Who wins this crucial matchup, Justin, and why?
Well, I think if the Pointers want to make the playoffs this year, they have to win this game, because if they don't, that puts a lot of pressure on them for the rest of the season. So this, I think, is going to be the biggest game of the year. And if the Pointers want to win, I think they have to take the same recipe against North Central. Take time off the clock and force turnovers, and I think they win this game.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that offensive mindset of just taking the time off the clock and playing safe football. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to that defense that's played so good, because Platteville's offense has been electrifying so far, except for like one hiccup against North Central. And they've got a very good running back whose name escapes me right now, who's playing outstanding football right now. He's got somewhere around 550 yards right now on the year so far. So I think that a defensive unit is going to win them the football game if they do, and I think it's going to be very close, not high scoring at all.
So who do you got on that one? Sorry.
The Pointers.
The Pointers. Well, I'm the only one that always goes against the Pointers, so I might as well just keep the trend going. I just don't see it seems like every time you look at last season, the season before, Pointers always have a tough time against their division. And obviously that's so because it's such tough competition, but I just don't see them playing. I think that North Central probably played their worst football game. Pointers played their best football game. Looking at the Pointers for that game, that's the best Pointers we're going to see all season in that game. I just don't see that happening again the way they played the past 2 weeks. I think they lose this one in Platteville this weekend.
It'll be tough, but Platteville, they're not as good as they have been. I mean, there's been D3 people say that they're overrated. I mean, they struggled against Dubuque. They got beat by North Central. I mean, they've struggled against River Falls also, so they're not as good as they have been in the past.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I don't think they've played a defense as good as the Pointers all season long. I think North Central's defense wasn't as good as everyone thought they were, obviously, coming in this year. But I don't think the Pioneers have been tested all year with a defense like the Pointers. So it'll be interesting to see how that high-flying offensive attack for the Pioneers does against the defense.
Alrighty, now let's jump to volleyball. The Pointers look to continue dominating as they traveled to UW La Crosse and took on the Eagles. The Pointers indeed looked dominant as they took care of the Eagles, easily winning the match 3-0. Krista Luce had 15 kills and Emma Brunkhorst had 12 as the 14th-ranked Pointers looked unstoppable. Moving forward, do you guys believe that the Pointers could win the conference, and do we expect this out of them?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, they won it the past 3 years in a row. They were picked to win this conference. They've been as high as number 2. And right now, they're on an absolute roll. I mean, they've won 6 or 7 in a row, and they've only lost like 2 sets out of the entire time. So they're on a roll. They're second in the conference right now. First is Whitewater. They still have to play Whitewater. So, yes, I think they can win this conference.
Yeah, I have to agree with Justin. I think they've got a very deep roster right now. I think every week it looks as if someone is stepping up that's different from the last week. So I think, they've got a bunch of different players who have been playing at a high level, and I think they're arguably the best team in the conference right now.
Well, we'll leave it out there. We'll leave it right there. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we will have Pacelli and SPASH football updates. Stay tuned.
The Love Doctor is in. Watch SBTV's new series featuring college dating advice, love confessions, and more. Michaela Hilgert is The Love Doctor. Watch the new series premiering this fall on SBTV Charter Channel 983.
Stevie Pointer loves SPTV News and the News' producers. Watch SPTV News weekly for breaking, campus, and local news across Stevens Point. Only on Charter Channel 983.
Hi, I'm Laura Braun, the General Manager at SPTV. I'm a Stevens Point native and want to make sure that we're providing you with the best local coverage of all the news, sports, and entertainment as we possibly can. If you have any questions or comments about our organization, feel free to email us or stop by our offices. We're located in the Communication Arts Center at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point and can't wait to meet you, because today we can make media together.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The SPASH Panthers took on Marshfield this past weekend and won 21-14. It is the second straight win for the Panthers, and they are now 4-4 on the year. And we were looking online before we started this show, and they're 2-4 in the conference right now. So it's very unlikely that they'll make the playoffs, because right now they're taking the teams above them, and then what the WIA does is they look for teams that have 5 wins, and then they go below 500. The Panthers might finish below 500, or will finish below 500 in the conference. So right now, the likely push for the playoffs is just not going to happen. They need a lot of things to happen for them even to make it in the playoffs. They've had a tough schedule this year, scheduled a lot of hard games. So, and that has shown now throughout. Well, let's move on now to the Pacelli. On the other hand, they haven't played so well. They pretty much have waved the white flag of surrender after a very brutal season. This past week, they lost 49-0 against Bonduelle, and the Cardinals have only scored 36 total points all year and have been shut out in their last 3 games. Let's talk about them just quick here. After such an abysmal season, do you think the Cardinals might look another way at another coach this next year?
I don't think so. I mean, they made the playoffs back a couple years ago. I mean, in high school football, you kind of have to do what's best with what's given to you. It can change from season to season. It's just, you got to do with what you have.
Yeah, I'd give him one more year, and if it's an absolute terrible season like this past season and they get shut out, 3 or 4 games in a row like they have this year, I think you start workshopping that option a little bit to go in another direction. But like Johnson said, at high school, it's you take what you're given in high school because you can't really recruit.
Yeah, high school, you take the hands you're dealt and you play with them. Well, let's move on now to the NFL. The Packers look to continue on their path of dominance after destroying the Vikings, but were a little flat-footed and caught off guard maybe by the Miami Dolphins. Aaron Rodgers was harassed all game but played very well throughout. The Dolphins hung tough with the Pack and were up 24-20 with a little over a minute left. It even took for some trickery for the Packers to get it done, as with no timeouts, the Packers faked a spike with 8 seconds left, and Davante Adams was able to get out of bounds with just 3 seconds left on the clock. The very next play, Rodgers hit Andrew Corliss in the end zone for the go-ahead score. Ultimately, it was a pretty exciting win, but most people assumed it would be a blowout. What does this game tell us about the Packers moving forward, Justin?
Well, obviously with Rodgers, they can do anything. I mean, it showed they're resilient. I mean, they got down in the second half. They had some injuries, which may end up costing them a game or 2 in the long run. I mean, 2 starting cornerbacks, that's going to hurt. But with Rodgers, I mean, the offense, even without the lack of a running game, is still pretty successful.
Yeah, and I think, it was a true test of resilience. I mean, obviously Aaron Rodgers is very good at keeping the team in it. However, the one thing that concerns me week in and week out with the Packers is that run defense. And I know Lattimore was hurt during the game, but they need other guys to step up and, do something on the line especially. Their defensive line has played pretty poorly this year. And I think if they're going to keep playing at a high level, their offense is going to need a lot of help from that defense, especially in the run support. But their cornerbacks being down, Tramon Williams and Sam Shields, obviously 2 pretty good, darn good cornerbacks in this league. And I saw a report that Tramon Williams is probably going to be back this week, but they're still uncertain about Sam Shields. So that we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, and for the Packers, they're so thin on the defensive side right now. They're bringing in guys off the street, and that's been troublesome these past few years, it seems like, especially on the defensive line and linebacker position. Well, let's talk about the Dolphins in that game and go back to that play. I believe it was a fake spike play, 8 seconds left. They had Davante Adams. No one on the field pretty much besides Aaron Rodgers knew that play was going to happen, and it just happened Davante Adams was looking at his way during that play. Talk about the corner, though. I mean, all he had to do was push him inside. He had the safety over the top to tackle him in bounds. If he tackles in bounds, the game's over with. He let him go outside. I mean, just terrible call by him right there.
Rodgers is lucky he was looking, or who knows what could happen. But yeah, the defensive back, all he had to do was keep him in bounds and the game was over. Davante Adams, though, was able to get out of bounds and ultimately led to the game-winning play for the Packers.
Yeah, and I think Aaron Rodgers kind of knew even if Davante Adams wasn't looking, there was a good chance it would just fall out of bounds and incomplete and stop the play clock. But Davante Adams, even on that play, tried to stay in bounds. He was running downfield, and if you look, like, I was watching the game with some buddies, and they were like, get out of bounds, and he was trucking it downfield. And so the cornerback, like you said, how could he not push him inside? Because Davante Adams was running inside at first, and then the safety was coming down over the top. But the Dolphins, they've got to be prepared for anything, especially against a team like the Packers with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. How can you not be prepared for a fake spike or anything really against Aaron Rodgers? So a poor job of game planning by them.
Well, and Joe Philbin coming from the Packers, I'm a little confused. It's no secret that the Packers love that back shoulder in the end zone. I don't know why they weren't looking for that with Corliss. I know it was down in crunch time, but you got to be thinking that. I mean, you watch every game. I think every time at least once in the game, Aaron Rodgers is scoring off a back shoulder play, so you got to be ready for that. I just don't get what they're looking at. I mean, we're fans and we see it happening. How can't you pick that out as a coach?
Yeah, and I think especially, Joe Philbin worked with Rodgers for years, and he knows how that offensive system works. And if you're the Dolphins, how do you not crack down on the Rodgers in that offense?
Okay, we're going to move on here. A game like this, however, is against a pretty mediocre team, getting the fans wondering ultimately if the Packers are in for a Super Bowl year this year. You guys think they are the team to beat in the NFC right now?
I think they can be one of the top teams in the NFC because Seattle's down. I mean, they just lost to Dallas. The NFC East is pretty strong with two top teams, Dallas and Philadelphia. The South is down this year, the NFC South, and the West. That's still up in the air between Arizona, San Francisco, Seattle. So they got a good chance to win the division. They're one of the top teams in the NFC, yes.
Not so fast, my friend. That defense has not sold me on the Packers right now. I think even if you look at Seattle, who lost to the Cowboys, I'll give you that. They had a little hiccup. They're a way more complete team than the Packers right now. I'll give them that. I mean, obviously the quarterback position goes to the Packers, but as far as efficiency goes and how good their defenses are, I still think defense wins championships, and Seattle's got a much more complete team. And I think they can be, but they've got to clean up house a little bit.
This guy is acting like he's Coach Ditko over here with the not-so-fast little approach there. I just think it depends how if Seattle gets the number one spot in the NFC, they're the best team in the NFC going to the playoffs. They don't, they're not. They are a way different team away from that stadium, and they're not. I would say they're half as bad when they actually play away. They're just like the Saints. If they're at home, they'll probably beat most teams. If they're away, it's a whole different story. Well, let's jump to this week's matchup. The Packers will be taking on the Carolina Panthers at home. This will be the second time the Packers will be facing a running quarterback in Cam Newton. And we know that the Packers have struggled in the past with running quarterbacks. Can they overcome the play of Cam Newton this week?
I don't think the defense is going to be able to stop Cam Newton. I mean, Cincinnati had one of the better defenses in the league, and Newton ran for over 100 yards. They put up 37 points on them, and the Packers, like you said, have struggled with mobile quarterbacks, especially Colin Kaepernick. He's absolutely torched them, so I think Cam Newton can have a good day this weekend.
Yeah, and I think Cam Newton is going to have a good day on the ground, especially because, I mean, if the Packers' run defense can't stop running backs, imagine Cam Newton breaking contain and going downfield. It's going to be a nightmare for the Packers' defense. But don't rely on Cam Newton to get the job done through the air if Tremont Williams plays, and especially if Sam Shields plays. I mean, I know they're a little gimpy after this last week, but if those two play, it'll be really tough for Carolina to get it done through the air.
Well, yeah, and speaking of through the air, it was reported today that Kelvin Benjamin's out with a mild concussion, and he might not even be playing this weekend. I think that might be the Achilles heel for this Panthers team overall. Let's just jump into it right away. Who wins this one?
Well, I'm going to let you guys go first on this one. I got something up my sleeve.
Okay. I think the Packers get the job done. I mean, they're in Green Bay. They're at home. I know that defense is shaky, but if you take those two quarterbacks who you want in a shootout, I would take Aaron Rodgers 100 times over Cam Newton.
Yeah, and people might be shocked by this even, and I have a couple scenarios. If they play in a shootout, the Panthers will not win. Cam Newton can't compete with Aaron Rodgers in a shootout. It's just not going to happen. And my pick this week, I'm on television saying this. I can't believe I'm saying it. I think the Packers win this one. Kelvin Benjamin, he might not even be playing. If he is even playing, I don't think they'll have a chance. I think it might be a shootout, and that's going to be the turning point for the Panthers this year. And it's going to be a tough couple more games here coming out of this stretch. I just don't think it's going to be enough. If they play it close, their defense shows up, they might have a chance if they play like versus the Bears, but I just don't see it happening. And I'm actually going to the game this weekend, excited. First time ever I'll be wearing an opposing team's jersey in Lambeau Field. It's going to be a little weird. I'll probably be getting harassed all over, but I got to stay by my team.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't pick the Panthers, but since I'm going to stick with this, I mean, what did Green Bay do last year? They were involved in a tie. What did Carolina do last week? Tie. So I'm going to go with another tie. Why not?
Speaking of ties, let's bring this up quick here because I wanted to talk about this. What do you think of the tying situation in the NFL? Should this be looked at more? I mean, it's the biggest sport in America, and you can still tie.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. I mean, some players supposedly don't even know the rule. They think they should keep playing. I don't like it. Hockey's changed it to overtime loss. Basketball doesn't have it. College football, they go till a winner. They need to do something to get rid of this tie.
Yeah, I think they need to throw away the whole overtime system right now because if you're watching and your team ties, that's as good as a loss to me. I don't think you want to see more football. I think they should adopt the college football overtime rules, honestly.
Well, coming up on Final Take, the MLB postseason has been a good one. We will discuss the matchups and make our World Series predictions. Stay tuned.
Serving a campus of 9,600 strong, we are the home of UWSP Television. We are SPTV. You can find us on Charter Channel 983, online, or on any of our social media sites.
Hey you! Are you creative? Do you like television? Would you like to make a show that appears on air? Then SPTV is the place for you. At SPTV, you can appear on air, learn how to shoot and edit video, write and produce your own show, and most importantly, gain skills and experiences that will last a lifetime. Want to join us at SPTV? Come check us out in the Communication Arts Center, rooms 121 and 130. We'd love to meet you. SPTV. Let's make media together.
The MLB postseason is off and running as the Royals lead the Orioles 3-0 in the ALCS, and they're winning right now in the bottom of the 7th inning, 2-1. On the other side in the NL, the Cardinals and Giants are the series is 2-1. The Giants and in the NLCS, the Royals have really been a Cinderella story here all season long. It's really hard to root against a team like that. Well, let's get right to it. Who do you guys see in the World Series?
Well, I picked Baltimore at the beginning of before the playoffs started. I mean, they looked really good, even with guys being out. But right now, how can you go against Kansas City? I mean, all their games, the games against the Orioles have been close. They've had a lot of extra inning games, but everything's bouncing their way. It just seems like it's destined to happen.
And, the Royals have something magical about them right now. I don't know what it is, but they just, week in and week out, especially here in the playoffs, they look to just keep getting the job done. But ultimately in the World Series, no matter who comes out of the ALCS right now, it's hard for me to pick anyone but the Cardinals or Giants to win the World Series because they've got such good experience on both sides, both teams there. And so whoever comes out of the NLCS will probably win in 3 or 4.
So who do you got in the World Series then?
I have the Giants, and I would have to say the Royals. I mean, it looks like they're going to win today unless something happens. But I have the Giants winning against the Royals. The playoff experience is just too much for that young Royals team. And I know that's magical. I know it's a Cinderella story, but I think it's going to end in the World Series.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick to my guns. No one likes to hear it. I think the Cardinals somehow come back from the 2-1 series right now where it's at, and I think they go on and they just find a way to win. The Royals has been a good story. I kind of pulling from everyone likes a Cinderella, everyone likes an underdog, so it'd be awesome to see the Royals win it all. I just think the Cardinals, they've been there, they know how it is, and they'll get the job done. And we'll leave it at that, I think. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have time for today. We thank everyone for tuning in with us. I'd like to thank Jocelyn Pomplin and Adam Yurkovsky for joining me today with their insightful opinions on the debate desk. And a big thanks to our technical staff and all their hard work to make this possible. Be sure to check us out on Facebook at SPTV UWSP Television. Follow us on Twitter at SPTV_UWSP. And watch all of our shows on demand on YouTube at UWSP at SPTV. Also visit the UWSP homepage, locate all your Pointer Athletics information. And just remember, fellow Pointers, here at Final Take, anything Pointers, anything sports. I'm Curtis Round, this is Adam Yurkovsky and Justin Pomplin. If you enjoy our Final Take show, make sure you tune in every week to stay up to date on Stevens Point sports. Remember, Pointers, anything sports.